Hello beautiful beings, and welcome to another episode of CE-5 Initiating Contact with Extraterrestrials. And in this, as I've stated previously, I'm just going through some of the material from my book with the same name. Now in this episode, I'm focusing more on the mechanisms of contact with consciousness. We can use technologies in terms of cameras to document things, EMF detectors, Gauss meters, compasses, thermometers, audio recording equipment. There's many different ways that we can go about this, but the main tool is your consciousness. You don't need any devices and technology, though I'll be going into that as well. Now in the description to this video, there are links to meditations, and I really recommend playing with these in your own way, looking at other people's CE-5 techniques as well. The key to contact though is to hit that state of consciousness, that unbounded awareness that encompasses all consciousness, which you're a cell of. From that place, there is no fear, and you connect with what you're in alignment with. So people can get taken aback from a contact event, whether it's a craft, a ball of light, an orb appearing, a being fully materializing. There's many different ways that contact can take place. And we all have it every day, I believe, through our thoughts, through our ideas, epiphanies, concepts, with our spirit guides, other aspects of ourselves, our higher self, God, source, creator. But with these meditations, they're basically guiding you through being the observer in such a way of, let's say, point form protocols in how we operate in a linear aspect. Now, what I mean by this is that we hear all the time we're multidimensional beings. We are multidimensional beings. But the way that this body computer operates, the mechanics of it, is that we take things in predominantly in a linear way due to our upbringing, education, society, and somewhat partly of our epigenetic traits from our ancestors. Now, with that said, what's happening is that the way that we can take things from linear communication going beyond that in a broader sense is beyond the five senses. We've got spiritual seeing, hearing, smells, taste, which are forms of communication that can happen through those senses. Certain beings can come in and they may have a smell and aroma. Sometimes you may hear voices. Sometimes you may get a taste. That is part of a communication that's being projected to you from another intelligence. It could be a past spirit, it could be extraterrestrial, angelic, what have you. So we've got seeing, hearing, smells, taste, touch. Now, touch is a very important mechanism with this, which is sensation, touch, sensation. This is something that in intense meditation practices, which I recommend doing, at least even once a year, doing a 5 to 10 day retreat, something like that. I'll be doing smaller retreats here, working up to doing bigger ones. But it's something where when you're observing sensation, for example, let's say vibration. To explain this a bit better, and from personal reference, I've done Vipassana. And I did it once for 10 days. And I levitated twice. I don't know how. I think when the shock kicked in from what was actually happening and being the observer of that, I just dropped straight back down. It wasn't much. It was just both times I was in a meditation pose, lifted up and then dropped. Now I was told that I was releasing my karma, my sankharas, but I believe there's more to it than that. And why I'm referring to this is you can have dreams, you may be getting visions already. But I think unless you go into a state to where purely you're in a meditative state for days on end, you're not going to understand 100% of what I'm saying, even when you're having altered states of consciousness experiences. Now, there is cases where people don't do the intense practices and they have these samadhi type experiences. They go into these higher states of consciousness. I was experiencing some of it without doing the practices, before I started doing the practices. Why I'm saying this is because we're bombarded every day through the five senses. To give you an example what I mean by that, when I did the 10-day retreat, I came out and the teacher said to me, just be aware for a few days because it's going to take you a bit of time to adjust. And so first thing I did was I went to a shop and I had a beard at the time and I just wanted to get a razor to shave. And I don't know how long it took me to find the razor that I wanted, because when I got to that part in the supermarket, I'm looking at a section and it's all razor blades, shaving cream, razors, and I just wanted a razor. I didn't care, but what it was because for so many days I'd been decoding my five sense reality. I was being bombarded with all these signs and I really had to look at each sign, price tag, product name, what it was, to take it in and try and figure out what it was that I was wanting, because I had to readjust to operating in a five sense reality again. And you don't realise until you come out of something like that you are bombarded constantly, whether it's by signs, whether it's by advertising, noises, objects moving, different aesthetics and colours. We're just being bombarded. When you go into a state of doing your practices for a few days on end, what happens is all that starts to just break down and you start to realise over time you're just vibration. Literally, the whole body is just vibrating, because when you're not talking to anyone, when you're not looking at them in the eyes, when you've got no electronics, when all you're doing is sitting there and observing the breath and just observing noises, sounds, thoughts coming and going, and getting to that state where you become the witness, observing the human experience through, we could say, this body, there comes a place where you start to realise, ooh, this is me, not this. So this is why meditation is important, and keeping it up as a regular practice. Before I tried Vipassana, which I've only done once, in that setting, I'd done it years previously to where I was doing 8 to 12 hours meditation and remote viewing a day for about 3 years. And then in recent years, I've been doing about the same amount of hours a day for 2 years. So I've done 5 years of very intense practices, which now include my yoga and qigong, yigong, and other practices as well. And I know from experience that, yes, when you can have these experiences with otherworldly beings, you experience some of this stuff, but not in the way where you would if you initiate it yourself, meaning you do the inner work and you just go, all right, for a few days, I'm just going to go into this. And I really reckon you need about 5 days at the very least. I recommend 10. I think with the original practices with Vipassana, they were doing 40 days, which wasn't sort of applicable in today's world. And it does teach you to go within, because if you can go within and get to that samadhi state or that higher state of consciousness, again, there's no fear in that state because you're in love and you're already acknowledging the unbounded state and the being that you are. You're on the same level playing field with these intelligences. So what it is reconnecting with your true nature, the mechanics of your true nature, and how the mechanics of the human body that you're in can operate with your higher self, your true nature, which is a cell of God's body. So meditation as a regular practice, I highly recommend. Everyone's got their niche and their own way of doing things, and I recommend you try different types. Zen, Transcendental, Vipassana, whatever floats your boat that you feel like you can get into a zone with. And I was mentioning a couple of episodes back, everyone's got their own way. Some might, swim laps in a pool. Some might hike, that gets them in their zone, that's fine. It's working with what works for you. But ultimately you have to do the inner work, and when you're doing meditation days on end, and that's all you're doing, stuff's going to come up. Stuff that's from the past, this person said this, I did that, how stupid was I? It's just, a lot of the time, thoughts coming and going. And this is where there's a process through that to where you can release the past And we have to go through these inner mechanics first and the inner work to be able to really handle contact on a high level. Because if that's not done, it can be harder for the beings to make contact in a level playing field, because it's like two opposites bouncing off each other like magnets. That's what it's like. It's like you're wanting them to come in, but your energy, if you're in a lower vibratorial state, it's really pushing them back. And again, it's not about looking up to these beings. I'm covering this material now to go into deeper material, which has got to do with self-mastery, because that's really where all this is. That's where contact is just a normal thing once you get the self-mastery, because you experience all this. It's just normal. It really is normal. But because we're trapped in a 5-sense reality, get up, go to work, drink on the weekends or sports and football, and we repeat it. You know, people want to do that, that's fine. But if we're trapped in a normal 5-sense reality, not open to the wonders of this existence and being better people and living in a peaceful world and being the best versions of ourselves that we can be, well then, that's just going to be your reality, the normal 5-sense reality. But if you're doing little bits each day to delve into this stuff, to follow what your heart's telling you, and to become, let's say, a better version of yourself, then things can change exponentially quick for you. So one of the meditations is connect with your spirit and ET guides. And this is really the thing that I delve into with my appointments, helping people with what we could say is a blueprint technique to help people find their own niche, their own way that they operate. I believe everyone can operate beyond, we could say, sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, which then goes into thought transfer, and it also goes into imagery in the mind's eye, as well as feelings. So you're adding more senses to the 5 senses to where you're operating multidimensionally. And it's through all those senses that we operate and communicate multidimensionally. The thing with this is that when you meet these beings halfway, if you start asking questions in a linear way, you're able to retrieve the information multidimensionally and we could say digest it in a way that's understandable. I'll give an example. When you're communicating, you're doing it through thought. You can even project imagery in your mind's eye using your imagination, which is really creation. So you project an image, a thought, which is a question, and then you observe thought, feelings, visions coming back as an answer. So when you meet somebody, you see what they look like, you ask them their name, where are they from. You do that in this state, you do it through thought, and you receive the answers back through thoughts, feelings, and visions. Those questions were done in a linear way, but you're using the senses to retrieve that information and digest it from a multidimensional means using the senses, not in a normal 5-sense reality way. And this is where this is all stepping stones to connect to the true nature, which is beyond even wanting to ask a lot of the stuff that we think we want to ask until we do have contact. And even then you can be taken aback by what's going on, and what you think you wanted to ask goes out the window because it's not what's on your mind. You're just taken aback and in awe by what you're experiencing. The other meditation, which is really the key focus of this whole series, is initiating contact. And in this, I go through a process, and all of them have clearings at the start, and then I go into guiding you through different means of initiating contact. Using your imagination is key with this, because they can meet you in that imagination. This is where I say that you have your own thoughts, but some of your thoughts aren't yours. Your ideas, your epiphanies, your concepts. It's working with that. Some people are more visual and they don't get the intuition stuff. Some people are operating through intuition and feelings and they don't get the visions. But through being the observer in your practices and setting the intention to experience whatever's going to help you be a better person and be of service and help you through your own soul journey and development, as long as you're doing a clearing at the start, that's where letting go and just letting the higher self meet with you and what's meant to connect with you lead the way for how the contact's meant to develop. If you're out there just wanting to film a craft or film a being, doing things on that level, it can not only not happen and unfold the way that you want, but it can hinder and even stop the whole process, because these beings can read you like a book. They know who you are, what you've been, what your intention is, and those that are in service don't care. So if your intention is just for the glitz and glamour of this, I would say probably don't worry too much about doing any of this, because it's not the intention to have. But if you're all about inner development and having a dialogue and evolving and helping the human species become, we could say, not just galactic, but multidimensional beings, that's where that motivation unlocks the key, as well as being in a place of love and service to others and being a vehicle for Source to work through. The other one that I got here is a really good, what I would say, observation exercise of going through different star beings and races coming through and just observing what they feel like on the body. Do you feel any sensations from each race? Do you get more of a hit and a build-up of energy with certain races than others? Do you get visuals? Do you get thoughts, ideas? This is a really good observation exercise where observation is really a key practice to evolving and developing your inner sensitivity, meaning being able to pick up on other energies, communication, the intention of energies around you as well. So I do recommend playing with this one. Again, these are in the description part of the video. And I always say remember to clear, because clearings are so important that I do it so many times throughout the day I couldn't say. But it can help you check in with yourself. Are the thoughts and things I'm thinking about, are they from me or are they from something else? When you go through a clearing, you can get clarity on these things. You can feel a lot better. You can feel more productive. You can be a sovereign being and more in your own power without other influences trying to come in. And when you're on this path, there are intelligences that are of service to self that will try and derail you. So you've got to be aware of this. But this is where, like I said, all the meditations have a clearing at the start. When you're going into the meditations, witness you observing. So again, this is where you're observing what's going on, the noises. It could be the sound of the music, me speaking in the meditations if you're doing them. But when you're observing that, you start to notice that there's a place behind you observing and witnessing you observing. This is the highest state. This is the state that is the God consciousness state that's beyond, we could even say, visuals and sounds and communication in a linear method. It's all knowing. And it can be quite beyond ecstasy in that state. But when you're doing these practices, and I'll be going through more videos, and I'm doing a lot here from the sanctuary that I'll be putting up as well as teaching people here. Things to look out when you're being the observer and you're witnessing you observing is sensations on the body, vibration. We are vibrating with this reality. This is where I was saying with Vipassana, you start to notice that you're just pure vibration. You literally start to vibrate. Every single molecule and atom of the body is just vibrating. And you acknowledge that after days of just pure meditating. And I don't think there's really ways to experience that any other ways. You could try drugs, what have you. I don't think that's the way to go. But I think purely when you're decoding the five sense reality and just being the observer and going beyond actually five senses, when you're starting to notice that you're vibrating with this realm that you're experiencing. That's where if you change the vibration, you start to vibrate with another realm, and you start to experience it. Just like I've said before, where people experience the angelic realms and they hear music, it's not music, it's the vibration of that realm. It's quite beautiful. So, keys with meditation and the practice is observing sensations. You may even get goosebumps, temperature changes, energy sensations on the body. This is, yes, partly depending on the situation, you now acknowledging that you're part of this vibration of this realm, that you're resonating with it, you're in harmony with this realm. It could be in terms of contact, you'll get goosebumps, hair standing up, temperature changes, energy on the body when another intelligence comes into your space of your light body, which goes out around you. So when somebody's light body is overlapping your light body, you'll get a sensation on the body. And you may not see them, but if you observe, right, who's here? Why are you here? You start going through questions like that, you'll start to pick up on things. So this is even with past spirits. It could be a past spirit. It could even be Bigfoot, a fairy, an ET, an angel. Just because you're not seeing them doesn't mean that something's not in your presence. Sometimes you will see them. This is also where, with the overlapping of the light bodies, there can be emotions and feelings being transferred, which is a form of communication. So being the observer, What emotions, what feelings are coming through? Are these my feelings? Are these my emotions? If not, observe it. There can be communication coming through that. And again, like I've said, thoughts, impressions, ideas, and knowingness. That's the way that the communication's projected. So I can be sitting here and I just go, right, they're here. Walk out, there's a craft outside, there's an orb just off the ground floating around, or there might be a being materialised. It's not like they're in the sky with the megaphone going, hey Pete, come outside, we're here to see you. It's literally just a thought. So this is how mundane it is. And because it's so mundane and people are expecting it to be something that it's not predominantly, people don't know what to expect. That's why they're stuck a lot of the time in the 5 sense reality of contact or little green men and flying saucers. Some of these beings can speak our language. Some of them have devices. But when you're dealing with more, we could say, non-corporeal and higher forms of intelligences, and I believe all intelligences on a base level can communicate through telepathy, whether it's with animals, insects, ETs, angels, past spirits. That is the base level form of communication, projecting a thought, what thoughts, feelings, visions come back, and you're sort of merging consciousnesses in that state. So just to be aware of that. Now, there is a thought projection technique as well. And I've spoken to others about this, and they've done this as well and had results where, for example, get a lounge chair outside, do a clearing, and just visualize a craft above you. You might be surprised it could take 15 minutes, 45 minutes, or you do it for 5 minutes, you forget about it. You might be just having some lunch while sitting outside, and then you look up and what you were projecting through thought to appear above you, it can appear above you. And what's happening is, we could say with egregores and tulpas. So for example, we can create things to happen, but also other beings can pick up on your thought of that and go, all right, this person's initiating contact, and this is where the phenomenon's got a sense of humour and can interface with you in so many different ways that they will get their craft materialised exactly where you're projecting a craft to appear in your mind. You look up and see it and they're there. But with egregores and tulpas, we could say, there's been locations that before I was known for this, I'm somebody that would go to some of the most haunted locations and houses and still help out on occasions depending on what's going on and what people need help with. And I've seen this with other investigations and investigators around the world, that sometimes they've been told a story that isn't true, and then people go in there and they start doing EVPs, which is where they get an audio recorder and they're trying to catch electronic voice phenomena, which sometimes, well, with that you won't hear it at the time, but you'll pick it up on the audio responding to your question, or even just making a noise, doing whatever in the background. And you can sometimes interact with them that way, ask them questions, and they'll respond on cue back to the question that you're asking, which means it's an intelligent interaction, not residual, which is where a residual is something like a tape player playing over and over. It's not going to interact with you. It's operating the same space, not the same time, but you can be picking up on it. And so, for example, with egregores, people can be going into a place, start asking for this being, it might be a past spirit, to appear, and it's passed down by a story that this person may have been killed in this spot, or they passed away in this spot. And then what happens later through investigation, you may even find out the person never even lived there, had never even been there, and didn't even die there. And through enough people going in there, speaking out loud, expecting this intelligence to be there, they can start to create the intelligence to be there, and even the personality of it. If they say it was, let's say, somebody that wasn't happy, and what you can get is just lower energies around you. You might even get a grumpy voice appear on the audio recorder. And so this is where this all overlaps and has to do with everything else, meaning CE-5 with the paranormal with consciousness and near-death experiences and ghosts and ETs and angels. I think it would be an injustice to those watching this if they haven't done the research in all these areas, that you really could be getting into stuff that you don't know, even demonic, to where things can mimic and do stuff that can portray to be of the light but aren't. So this is where we can even create beings, we can create experiences to happen, And this is where we start to get into the mechanics of consciousness, that we can create this through our thoughts. So being very aware of what our thoughts project is key to being in truth with this. Because if not, and we're having thoughts about certain things and creating things, and we're not aware that our thoughts can create them, you might be creating an experience or a scenario and you think that there's something to it, meaning from another intelligence, but it could be you creating it. And I've done this through experiments with people where I've got them together to project a form or something manifesting, and then it blinks in momentarily and then goes. And anybody else that might have seen that, if they didn't know that, would think that that was another intelligence. It's something that we've projected, which the Tibetans do as well. Tulpas, they can create animals, different types of intelligences and beings to manifest. This is what they're doing with their practices, and this is the self-mastery. It's not to be what I would say gloated about or a thing to be a show pony about, but you've got to be aware of these things. Now, the pendulum technique. Many people use this. I would say always do a clearing before attempting it. A pendulum in a way is great to use for many different things, especially if you're acquainted with it, if you've practiced in it. Otherwise, what I would say is always use your heart. Anything that's external or a tool is basically that, it's just a tool. But your heart is what we could say the most truest form of tool, because that connects to the light body, and the light body's interfacing with the field, which is all where all can be accessed, where all truth is. And I think sometimes, unless you're connecting with the heart, which I say, even put your hand on your heart, ask yourself a question, you may feel an expansion or an energy build-up. That is, in my way, saying that something's right. If there's no sensation or even a compression of energy, it's something that may not be right for you. So a pendulum in a way is the same thing, but the more that we play with our heart, the more we're accessing our own mechanics, our own inner mechanics, multidimensional mind, where a tool is still great, but I think it can be less accurate, but still great to use. Never trust anything 100%, but trust this, the heart. So I've got one here, labradorite crystals on it. I'll just give you an example. You can see it like that now. Now I want to do a clearing and just watch what happens. Now you'll see that it's spinning now. Now show me a yes. You'll see now it's going back and forth from me towards the camera. Now show me a no. And now it's going left to right. So that's just an example of how you could use one. And they can pick up on different energy spots. You could even find vortexes and portals with them if you know what you're doing. I'm only going through that because that's the way that you could even communicate with an intelligence. Especially 100% do a clearing first. You don't want to invite anything or anyone or anything through, but you could, get a yes or no if it's been a male or female, or if it's neither. It might be just standing still or going side to side for no, and then you want to spell out its name, and then what we could say is you hit a letter and it starts going to yes, and then you go back and start again. You can get a name, you can get an age, you can ask certain questions and get a yes and no. There's many ways that you can go about this. So that is one tool that I do know a lot of people that use pendulums. And I think for some they can be useful. I actually found this place through a pendulum, and I know that James Gilliland did the same with his, and I found it well before I even had this place on the radar in my consciousness, meaning, what would I be doing if I moved there? And I used to come where I am now as a child. I used to come here really my teenage years, but I never thought I'd move here. It's not that I didn't like the place, it was close to my hometown, but I just didn't think I would end up here. And I used to actually come here years ago and do some environmental work. So it's funny how things play out, but it said, on a map, it showed this location I'll be coming to, this town that I'm pretty much near now. So yeah, they can be useful. But like I say, this is number one that you trust, the heart. Use the heart, that's your biggest tool. Now there's psychometry exercises as well. Now, psychometry is when you hold an inanimate object and use your mind's eye thoughts and feelings to read the energy in it, including the history of events or people associated with the object. So this type of spiritual practice is based on the idea that the energy and feelings of people and the events they experienced are imprinted on objects once held by them. Even clothing, furniture and buildings can absorb energies and thoughts from the people and animals that have been around them. Try this and see if you can receive information through thoughts, ideas, impressions and feelings, knowingness. You can practice by asking someone for an object, then hold the object and go into the state of meditation and observation. You can do this with anything, even something simple like another person's car keys. It's a really easy tool and technique. And it surprised me years ago when I started out playing with something like this and how accurate I was. And it was something that just wasn't on my radar. And when I started playing with it and started doing exercises with it and more, just like with remote viewing and other things, you'd be surprised how quickly, and if you keep the practices up, even to a minimal of a few times a week, even for a few minutes throughout a week, how much we can evolve and keep that ability going and even enhance it as we exercise it. Just like anything, if you exercise it, it can get toner, it can build up, and you can be more productive with it. If not, you can lose it, or become very unproductive with it. So with this exercise, it's really about fun, but it's good to exercise the psychic senses. I've done it many times. Let's say you just ask a friend for an object that is from somebody that they know, and you're going to do this exercise, which is holding that object and reading about that person. And it would be best if you don't know who the person is, the object to lead on who the person is if you know a bit about this person so you're not led on. Basically, get an object. So let's just say it might even be a crystal that your friend's grandmother had, and the grandmother's passed away. Now with the crystal, you might not know who owned it. Could be a male, could be female, could be any age, you don't know. And they might have walked around every day for years with that in their pocket. It carries their energy, it carries their traits, it can carry emotional, strong emotional energies. So if your friend gives it to you and you hold it, and what you do is you just clear and then start tuning into it. You might be thinking of, could be a pink dress and they love to wear a pink dress. You might smell, let's say, lemonade and they used to love making lemonade and drinking lemonade. You might get a flash of let's say a car, and it used to be the car that they drove. So objects carry energy from people, especially when there is emotional attachments to a certain object. Let's say it could be somebody's grandfather and they had a pocket knife and they had this in their pocket for 40 years and there's a lot of energy in that. So you can hold that, but you might not know whose it is. You might first off, assume that it's a man's, because a lot of men carry a pocket knife around more than women. And so that might be a little lead on thing, but once you start tuning into it, you might be able to get the trace. It might be the beer that he used to drink, or he used to smoke cigarettes, or he had a pickup truck, or all this different stuff. And you nail it down, and the person goes, yeah, my grandfather was exactly like that. Yeah, he had this pickup truck, and this was his favourite thing, and this was his hobby, and you can start to pick it up. These are little exercises. So this is where getting together in little groups, everyone bring an object they can use like that, anything that's associated with somebody that they knew, or even in the living know, they don't have to be past. And you could give the object out to everyone in the group, get them to write down just, a paragraph on what they're getting. And then at the end of it, once everyone's had a go, you can read it out and then ask the person who bought that object, is this correct or not? And you'll be surprised how much you can be bang on with things like this. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope this has been beneficial, and keep an eye out for the next one. And blessings. Be well.